My name is Madison Carter. I'm 29 years old, and the night my parents accused me of stealing $500,000 was the night I stopped being their daughter. It wasn't a gradual estrangement or a slow drifting apart. It was a severing. A clean, brutal cut, like an executioner's axe falling on the block. One moment, I was a Carter, a name that echoed with the weight of old money and societal reverence in every corner of Boston. The next, I was nothing. A ghost haunting a life that was no longer mine, stripped of my name, my home, and my future, all to protect the one thing my family valued more than their own child, their honor. For 11 years, that night has been both my torment and my fuel. It's the memory I replay in the sterile silence of my penthouse, the ghost that sits across from me in every boardroom, the driving force behind the empire I built from the ashes of the girl they threw away. They thought they were ridding themselves of a disgrace. They never imagined they were creating a weapon. And today that weapon is aimed directly at the heart of their world. Today my company Aethelred Inc. will complete its hostile takeover of Carter Consolidated, and I will finally see them again. Not as their long-lost daughter, but as the architect of their ruin. The memory is seared into my mind, as vivid and searing as a fresh brand. It was the evening of my 18th birthday. Carter Mansion was ablaze with light, a glittering jewel box perched on the edge of the Atlantic. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, salt spray, and the cloying sweetness of champagne. My mother, Eleanor, was in her element, a regal ice queen gliding through a sea of Boston's elite, her smile a perfectly calibrated instrument of social warfare. My father, Richard, stood by the grand fireplace, a stern-faced patriarch holding court, his voice a low rumble of authority as he discussed stock prices and political donations. And then there was William, my brother. 5 years my senior, the golden boy, the heir apparent. He was everything I wasn't, confident, charming, and utterly ruthless. He moved through the party with an easy grace, his hand resting possessively on the arm of his latest society-approved fiancée. He caught my eye from across the room and gave me a smile that never reached his cold, calculating eyes. It was a look of pure condescension, the same one he'd given me my entire life. I was the inconvenient afterthought, the spare part in the Carter machine. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a poorly cast actor in a play I hadn't auditioned for. I escaped to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books that no one ever read. It was my only sanctuary. I was tracing the spine of a first-edition copy of The Count of Monte Cristo when the world came crashing down. The library doors burst open. My father stood there, his face a thundercloud of rage. My mother and William were right behind him, their expressions a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. "Where is it, Madison?" My father's voice was a low growl, vibrating with a fury I had never witnessed before. "Where is what?" I asked, my heart beginning a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. "Don't play dumb with me," he spat. "The money. The $500,000 from the safe." My mind went blank. The safe was in his study, a place I was forbidden from entering. I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course she'd say that, father," William interjected, his voice smooth and reasonable, the very picture of a concerned son. "But I think you should see this." He held up a small, ornate jewelry box. "My jewelry box." He opened it, and inside, nestled amongst the few modest pieces I owned, were several thick stacks of $100 bills, bound by Carter Consolidated wrappers. It was a fraction of the missing amount, but it was enough. It was the damning, irrefutable proof. "I found it under her bed," William said, his gaze flicking to me, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. It was a lie. A blatant, venomous lie. I had never seen that money before in my life. I looked from the box to their faces, searching for a single shred of doubt, a glimmer of faith. I found nothing. My father's eyes were filled with a terrifying mixture of rage and disgust. My mother looked at me as if I were a piece of filth she'd found on her shoe. "I didn't do it," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "I swear." "I would never." "You are a liar and a thief," my father roared, his voice echoing off the silent judging books. You have brought shame upon this family. You have spat on the Carter name. Richard, the guests, my mother hissed, her primary concern not my guilt or innocence but the potential for a scene. William, get her out of my sight, my father commanded, turning his back on me as if the very sight of me was unbearable. It was the ultimate dismissal. Tears streamed down my face as I pleaded, my voice rising to a hysterical shriek. Dad, please. You have to believe me. William is lying. William grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh like talons. Stop making this harder than it has to be, Madison, he murmured, his breath cool against my ear. You've been a disappointment your entire life. It was only a matter of time before you did something like this. He dragged me out of the library, past the curious, whispering guests, their faces a blur of judgment. He hauled me up the grand staircase to my room. He threw a duffel bag on my bed. Pack. You have 10 minutes. Father wants you gone before anyone starts asking too many questions. I was numb, my body moving on autopilot as I threw a few clothes into the bag. The girl in the mirror was a stranger, her face pale and streaked with tears, her eyes wide with a pain so deep it felt like a physical wound. The accusation was absurd. I had no need for money. I had a trust fund that would activate on my 21st birthday. But logic had no place in this trial. The verdict had already been decided. 10 minutes later, I was standing on the curb outside the massive iron gates of the estate, the duffel bag at my feet. Party was still in full swing, the sound of laughter and music a cruel mockery of my shattered world. A black car, one of the family's fleet, pulled up. The driver, a man who had known me since I was a child, wouldn't meet my eyes. He handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 and a one-way bus ticket to nowhere. My father's final message was delivered by the emotionless driver. Mr. Carter says you are no longer his daughter. The family name is not yours to use. You are not to contact them ever again. As the car pulled away, leaving me in the cold, unforgiving night, I looked back at the house. It was a beacon of light and warmth, a world I was now permanently locked out of. That was the night Madison Carter died. And in her place, something else, something harder and colder, began to take root. The first year was a special kind of hell. The $500 disappeared in a matter of weeks. I learned the hard way about the true cost of survival. I slept in bus stations, in shelters that reeked of despair and disinfectant, and on the worst nights, huddled in darkened alleyways, praying for morning. I learned the gnawing ache of real hunger, the soul-crushing humiliation of begging for scraps. Boston, the city of my birth, had become a hostile, alien landscape. Carters I saw in magazines and on the news were like characters from a forgotten life, their smiles and charity galas a grotesque parody of the cruelty I knew they possessed. I took whatever work I could find, washing dishes in a greasy spoon diner, scrubbing toilets in a dingy motel, stocking shelves on the night shift. I was invisible, a ghost moving through the underbelly of the city my family owned. Every dollar I earned was a victory, a small act of defiance against the fate they had assigned me. I saved obsessively, stashing my meager earnings in a worn sock. The turning point came on a frigid winter evening. I was 19, huddled over a lukewarm cup of coffee in a 24-hour diner, trying to make it last. I was sketching on a napkin, not art but logic flows. I'd always had a knack for seeing patterns, for understanding complex systems. It was a skill my family had dismissed as a quirky, useless hobby. In that diner, I was trying to design a more efficient inventory management system for the grocery store where I worked. A man sitting a few booths away had been watching me. He was older, with tired eyes but a sharp, intelligent face. His name was Jacob Stern. He wasn't a billionaire or a savior in a shining suit. He was a retired software engineer who owned a small, struggling tech consulting firm. He came over, pointed a crooked finger at my napkin, and said, "That's not bad. What else can you do?" That question was a lifeline. For the first time in over a year, someone had looked at me and seen potential, not pity or disgust. I showed him more of my notebooks, filled with algorithms, business models, and ideas I had scrawled down in stolen moments. Jacob saw something in the raw, untamed intelligence of the disgraced Carter heir. He offered me a job, an internship really. Pay was next to nothing, but it came with a dusty couch in the back of his office and unlimited access to his computers. It was a palace. Under Jacob's mentorship, I thrived. I devoured books on coding, finance, and corporate strategy. The anger that had been a raging inferno inside me was now being channeled, refined, and forged into a diamond-hard ambition. I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to conquer. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and an unquenchable thirst to prove them all wrong. After 2 years, I wasn't just Jacob's intern, I was his partner. We developed a proprietary logistics software that was revolutionary. It streamlined supply chains with an efficiency no one had ever seen. We called our little company Aethelred Inc, a name from an old history book, a king who was ill-advised and unprepared. A private joke that only I understood. We sold our first software package to a small shipping company. Then a larger one. Within 5 years, Aethelred was making waves. We expanded, hiring the best and brightest minds, people who cared about innovation, not pedigree. I was no longer the girl on the street. I was a CEO. I traded my tattered coat for custom-tailored suits that were as sharp and unforgiving as my business tactics. Jacob passed away from a heart attack when I was 26, leaving me his half of the company. His death was the only time I allowed myself to cry since that night. He had been more of a father to me than Richard Carter ever was. After that, a new, colder resolve settled over me. There was no one left to temper my ambition. Aethelred Inc went on a ruthless campaign of acquisition and expansion. We absorbed our competitors, diversifying into cybersecurity, AI, and biotech. By the time I was 28, I was a billionaire. My name was whispered with a mixture of awe and fear in the circles my parents still dominated. The media called me a prodigy, a mystery, the recluse CEO who never gave interviews or showed her face at galas. They knew nothing of the girl who used to be Madison Carter. It was 6 months ago that my master plan began to take shape. I was reading a financial report when a familiar name caught my eye, Carter Consolidated. They were failing. Decades of my father's conservative, arrogant leadership and my brother's reckless mismanagement had left the company bleeding money, a dinosaur lumbering towards the tar pit of bankruptcy. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't enough to be more successful than them. It wasn't enough to be richer than they could ever dream of. I wanted to take everything from them. I wanted them to know the same powerlessness, the same despair they had inflicted on me. I wanted to own their legacy just so I could burn it to the ground. Using a series of shell corporations, Aethelred began buying up Carter Consolidated's debt and stock. We did it silently, surgically, until we had a controlling interest. The final shareholder vote to approve the acquisition is a mere formality. The board meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m. today. They have no idea who is on the other side of the table. They just know their company is being sold to a faceless corporation called Aethelred Inc. They believe they are coming to beg for their jobs, for a place in the New World Order. They have no idea they are walking into a reckoning 11 years in the making. The limousine glides to a silent stop in front of Carter Tower, a monument of glass and steel that has dominated the Boston skyline for 50 years. It's a symbol of my family's power, of their enduring legacy. A legacy built on secrets and lies. As I step out onto the pavement, I feel a strange sense of detachment, as if I'm watching a character in a film. The woman in the reflection of the tinted window is a stranger. Her hair is pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. Her charcoal gray suit is a piece of bespoke armor. Her face, a mask of cold, serene control. There is no trace of the terrified girl who was cast out from this world. My security detail flanks me as I walk through the revolving doors. The lobby is an opulent cathedral of marble and brass, designed to intimidate and impress. A massive portrait of my grandfather, a man I barely knew, hangs on the far wall, his painted eyes seeming to follow me with stern disapproval. Heads turn as I walk towards the private elevator. Whispers follow in my wake. They don't know who I am, but they know I am important. Power has its own distinct aura. The elevator ride to the top floor to the boardroom is silent. My reflection in the polished brass doors is distorted, a stranger staring back with my eyes. For a fleeting second, a tremor of doubt shakes my resolve. What am I hoping to achieve? Will this gaping wound in my soul finally close? Will the victory taste as sweet as I've imagined for over a decade? The tremor passes, replaced by the familiar, comforting chill of purpose. I am not here for healing. I am here for justice. The elevator doors slide open. My assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, is waiting. "They're all here, Ms. Vance," she says, using the professional surname I adopted. Vance. A name with no history, no baggage. A name I chose for myself. "Thank you, Chloe. Hold all my calls." I take a deep breath, the air tasting of stale power and recycled fear. I walk the final few steps to the heavy oak doors of the boardroom. I can hear the murmur of anxious voices from within. My hand rests on the cool brass handle. This is it. Culmination of 11 years of pain, struggle, and relentless, single-minded focus. I push the doors open and step inside. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to me. And there they are. My family. My judges. My executioners. My father, Richard Carter, is at the head of the long mahogany table. He looks older, smaller than I remember. The iron certainty in his posture has been replaced by a weary stoop. His hair is more silver than black, and the lines on his face have deepened into fissures of anxiety. My mother, Eleanor, sits to his right, as impeccably dressed and coiffed as ever. But the mask of regal composure is cracking. Her fingers twist a pearl necklace at her throat, a telltale sign of her agitation. Her eyes, when they meet mine, are wide with confusion. And William, my brother. He stands by the window, looking out over the city that was supposed to be his kingdom. He has the same arrogant tilt to his head, but there is a puffiness around his eyes, a slackness in his jaw that wasn't there before. The golden boy has tarnished. The other board members, faces I vaguely recognize from a lifetime ago, stare at me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I walk slowly, deliberately, towards the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. The sound of my heels on the polished floor is the only sound in the room. I place my leather portfolio on the table and look directly at my father. "You must be the representative from Aethelred," he says, his voice strained. He doesn't recognize me. Not yet. How could he? The woman standing before him is a world away from the heartbroken child he banished. "I am more than a representative, Mr. Carter," I say, my voice calm, even, and utterly devoid of emotion. "I am Aethelred." A flicker of confusion crosses his face. My mother leans forward, squinting slightly. It is William who sees it first. His jaw drops and the color drains from his face. He looks as if he has seen a ghost. "Madison," he chokes out, the name a ragged whisper of disbelief. The name hangs in the air, an unexploded bomb. My father's head snaps up. My mother's hand flies to her mouth, her eyes widening in genuine shock. For a glorious, terrible moment, they are frozen, trapped in a tableau of utter astonishment. "Hello, Father." "Mother." "William," I say, allowing a small, cold smile to touch my lips. "It's been a long time." My father lurches to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "What is the meaning of this? What trick is this?" "It's no trick," I reply, my voice cutting through his blustering like a shard of ice. "It's a hostile takeover. Aethelred Inc. has acquired a 58% controlling interest in Carter Consolidated." As of 10 minutes ago, the final transaction was approved. This company, this building, this legacy, it's all mine now. The reality of my words sinks in, and the room dissolves into chaos. The board members are murmuring in shock, looking back and forth between me and the unraveling Carter family. My mother looks like she's about to faint. "You can't," my father stammers, his face turning a blotchy red. "This is our family's company. It's been in the Carter name for 100 years. A name you taught me has no value, remember?" I say, my gaze unwavering. "You took it from me, after all." "Madison, please," my mother finally finds her voice. It's not the voice of the Ice Queen, but a thin, pleading whine. "After all these years, why would you do this to us?" "We're your family." I laugh. The sound is harsh and humorless in the tense silence. "Family? Is that what you call it?" A family doesn't throw their daughter out on the street based on the lie of a jealous son, with nothing but $500 and a bus ticket. A family doesn't sever all ties to protect a reputation built on hypocrisy. You are not my family. You are the people who sentenced me to death and were surprised when I learned how to fight my way out of the grave. I turn my gaze to William. He's backed away from the window, his face a mask of panic. He looks like a cornered animal. "It was you, wasn't it, William?" I say, my voice dropping to a conversational tone that is somehow more menacing. "You planted that money in my room. You needed it, didn't you? You had a rather significant gambling debt to a very unpleasant man in Providence. $500,000, if I remember correctly. My private investigator was very thorough. It's amazing what you can find when you have unlimited resources and a decade's worth of motivation." William starts to bluster, to deny, but his eyes give him away. My father stares at him, a dawning horror on his face. He is finally seeing his perfect son for what he truly is. "You threw me away to protect a thief and a liar," I say to my parents. "You sacrificed me for him." Well, the bill for that choice has finally come due. I open my portfolio and slide a single sheet of paper across the table towards my father. These are my terms. As the new majority shareholder, I am dissolving the current board, effective immediately. All executive positions held by the Carter family are terminated. Your company cars, your expense accounts, your club memberships, all revoked. "You can't do this," Richard whispers, sinking back into his chair, a broken man. "Oh, I can," I say. "I'm also renaming the company. Carter name will be scrubbed from every building, every letterhead, every last vestige of this so-called empire. By the end of the month, Carter Consolidated will cease to exist. As for the three of you, you will be left with exactly what you gave me. Nothing." My mother begins to sob openly, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. William is hyperventilating, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape that doesn't exist. But my father just stares at me, and for the first time I see something other than anger or pride in his eyes. I see a flicker of understanding, a devastating wave of regret. It's 11 years too late. "Why, Madison?" he asks, his voice hoarse. "For revenge." I stand up, my movements precise and final. I look at the three of them, the architects of my pain, now sitting in the rubble of their own making. The sense of triumph I had anticipated, the wave of cathartic release I had craved for so long, is absent. In its place is a vast, cold emptiness. "You taught me that in this world there is only power and weakness, Mr. Carter," I say, addressing him formally one last time. "You taught me that honor is a commodity and loyalty is for fools. You taught me that love is conditional. I am simply the culmination of everything you taught me. This isn't revenge. This is a business transaction. And you are the cost I was willing to pay to build my empire." I turn and walk towards the door, not looking back. I don't need to see their faces anymore. I have them memorized. I step out of the boardroom and close the doors gently behind me, sealing them in their self-made tomb. As I walk towards the elevator, The sounds of my mother's hysterics and my father's defeated silence fade away. I have won. I have taken everything. The victory is absolute, complete, and crushing. So why do I feel so hollow? In the elevator, my reflection stares back at me again. The mask is still perfectly in place, but I can see the cracks beginning to form. Underneath the billionaire CEO, beneath the armor of Aethelred, a lonely, heartbroken 18-year-old girl is weeping in the silence. I have my justice. I have my vengeance. But as the elevator descends, taking me away from the ruins of my past and towards an empty, uncertain future, I realize with a chilling clarity that I have lost the one thing I can never buy back, the chance to be a daughter. And in that hollow victory I am, and perhaps always will be, utterly and completely alone. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left, and thank you for watching.